From West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
Support for the Legislature Today has been provided by the following. The High Technology Foundation, headquartered at the I-79 Technology Park in Fairmont. Online at wvhtf.org. Connecting West Virginia families and businesses through high-speed internet services. Learn more about connecting at frontier.com.
At the Legislature today, there was major movement on two of the most important bills at this session. Debate over amendments on the education reform bill in the House, and bipartisan support for the bill to ease prison overcrowding in the Senate. And we'll meet the first executive director of the new Office of Minority Affairs. It took the legislature several years to pass the legislation that created this office. We'll find out more about its work on the Legislature today. Good evening, I'm Beth Voorhees. The quick pace of the governor's education reform bill was slowed today as House Republicans proposed and strongly defended 5 amendments during the floor session. As Dave Mistich reports, in the end, as Senate Bill 359 heads for a floor vote tomorrow, it remains the same bill the Senate sent to the House earlier this week.
House Minority Leader Tim Armstead proposed an amendment that would mandate reductions in the Department of Education so that the employee-to-student ratio would not exceed 1 employee for every 2,000 enrolled students. Armstead cited the statewide education efficiency audit when he noted there is 1 school staff member per 419.3 students in West Virginia schools, second only in the United States to Alaska. The amendment failed to pass 44 to 52. Delegate Patrick Lane of Kanawha County proposed an amendment that would create an alternative evaluation process for teachers based upon a 3-factor test. Teachers would automatically receive a $1,000 bonus just for participating. Lane explains the evaluation and additional bonuses teachers might receive.
The evaluation is made up of 50% from student achievement, 25% from administrator and peer observations, and 25% from student surveys. And if the teacher meets the determined and acceptable success that we place, that's promulgated by policy, the teacher then receives a $2,500 bonus.
Lane was questioned by Delegate Tim Manchin, who asked how much the teacher pay raises would cost the state if all teachers participated in the alternative evaluation. Lane said the maximum cost would be $80 million per year, and that the bonuses would be on a one-time basis and not affect the teacher's base salary. Delegate Justin Markham asked questions of Lane related to the student survey for the alternative teacher evaluation.
25% of your proposal is based on a student survey, correct?
That's correct. It's 25% based on student surveys. I'd like to answer the gentleman's question, if at all possible. 25% is based on student surveys, which are developed in line with the research findings of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They are not questions, and the reason that I didn't put the questions in the amendment is because I don't have the expertise to develop the particular questions.
Delegate Misha Poor said the findings from the Gates Foundation study might not help adequately evaluate teachers because it ignores another problem in the state education system.
If we can't deal with getting the students in their seats to get the instruction, it seems a far stretch to depend on a study that's done nationwide when we have evidence just here in our state about the truancy problem. So I believe that the gentleman from Kanawha County may just be taking a quick step above the current problem, which is truancy. I certainly respect our teachers and the work that they're doing, but I also want them to get a fair evaluation for the work that they are doing.
Lane's amendment to offer pay raises for alternative teacher evaluations failed 20 to 75. Delegate Cindy Frisch of Monongalia County proposed an amendment that would retain the $175,000 salary cap for the state superintendent of schools. That cap is currently in code, but was removed while the bill was being negotiated in the Senate. Members of the House Education Committee questioned Board of Education President Wade Linger about that provision in Tuesday's committee meeting.
I have the budget bill here for fiscal year 2014 under the line 333, State Board of Education, the State Department of Education, for personnel services. It's a little less than $5.5 million. It's $5,460,500. Nowhere here do I see the superintendent's pay line itemed in the budget bill that the governor presented us, because it's not in the budget bill. The only place it's addressed would be in the state code.
Frisch's amendment was shot down 26-70. Two other amendments were also proposed by House Republicans that failed approval. Delegate Ron Walters of Kanawha County sought to include a new section of the bill that would establish an electronic textbook pilot program. That amendment was also rejected with a 23-73 vote. House Minority Whip Darrell Coles proposed an amendment to authorize the establishment of a public charter school system. Democrats blasted that proposal as well, with Delegate Randy Schwartzmiller of Hancock County arguing that accepting that amendment would prove a lack of faith in the current system. While speaking in opposition to the charter school amendment, Delegate Nancy Guthrie of Kanawha County said she believes there was plenty of opportunity to shape the bill in the Education Committee.
Throughout this whole discussion, this morning and now into the afternoon, my colleagues on the other side have sort of made it sound like they didn't have anybody in the room. They were locked out of negotiations. If all of these amendment ideas were such great ideas, then why in the committee process did they not raise one amendment? Why didn't they say, hold on a second, this is what we want to do?
House Minority Leader Tim Armstead countered Guthrie's position by pointing out that second reading is for amending bills.
The idea that the other members of this House who are not on education don't have the right to stand on this House and offer an amendment is quite frankly offensive to me. I believe Second Amendment, or the second reading of a bill, Freudian slip here, Second Amendment at this session. Wonder where that came from. Anyway, second reading of a bill is for every member of this House to be able to get on this floor and make an amendment. And it's, quite frankly, completely against the rules of what we're talking about for us to get up here and say, oh, we didn't make an amendment in committee, so therefore you can't bring these amendments. I think most of the people who have raised the amendments that we've talked about here were people who weren't on education. And quite frankly, again, going back to the whole idea of this agreed-to bill, it is not an agreed-to bill until the names come up on this board and this House agrees to it.
Coles' amendment to establish a charter school system ultimately failed, 18-78. Senate Bill 359 will be on its third reading tomorrow, where it will go to vote. If passed, the bill will make its way to the governor's desk and, once signed, will become law. For the Legislature Today, I'm Dave Mistich in the House of Delegates.
The Senate took up another major piece of legislation from Governor Tomlin today, the bill to take on West Virginia's prison overcrowding. The bill saw a few minor amendments in committee and on the floor, but some Senate members spoke out to say they believe the bill is a good way to start curbing future growth. Ashton Mara reports.
Senate Bill 371, the governor's bill on prison overcrowding, would add more funding for substance abuse programs, enact alternative penalties for those who commit technical violations while on parole, and requires pre-trial risk assessments for offenders before bail. Senator Clark Barnes from Randolph County stood in support of the bill, saying his participation on the Select Committee on Children and Poverty has shown him that the state's problems with poverty, teen pregnancy, truancy, and drug use are all contributing to our prison population.
All these social ills that we have here in West Virginia that we would like to take care of, but we as a government body, we can't cure our social ills. All we can do is take little steps to try and correct what we can. Now we have the kind of problems in those regional jails that you're supposed to have in prisons, except we're not equipped to take care of it. We don't have the programs, we don't have drug treatment, we don't have rehabilitation in those regional jails. Those are things that we have to address.
The bill tries to address those concerns by creating video teleconference or online classes for inmates backlogged in regional facilities who are not able to take the rehabilitation classes they would have access to in state prisons. But one of the most controversial sections of the bill, the creation of a 6-month early release program for some offenders, has received some pushback, specifically from GOP members in the House. Senate Judiciary Chair Senator Corey Palumbo of Kanawha County explains the new provision.
One of the most, talked about provisions of the bill is the required mandatory supervision. There would be 1 year of mandatory post-release supervision if the inmate's serving a sentence for a felony violence against a person, felony offense where the victim was a minor child, or felony offense involving the use of a firearm. If you're a felony offender in any of those categories, there would not be any early release, but there would be a required 1 year of mandatory supervision. For all other offenses, the inmate would be released to mandatory supervision for 180 days, 180 days prior to the required release of that offender.
Palumbo says should that offender be released and commit another crime, he or she would serve time for the new offense and also make up for the early release. Senate Minority Leader Senator Mike Hall spoke to the provision, saying he's heard talk against the section, but decided he would vote yes.
And I've had to resolve in my mind the question of the early release, which some have brought up as an objection that that's being soft on crime or whatever. Those kinds of comments have been made. And I'm a layman. I'm not in the system. I'm not a lawyer. I've never been involved in this. But my decision to vote yes is on the fact that it makes sense to me that even if you let somebody out 6 months early and you supervise them, that recidivism will be less. And if you allow them to stay 6 more months with no supervision, that recidivism will be more. The statistics show that.
Palumbo says much of the bill, including early release, is based on the findings of the Justice Reinvestment Council. The council's research has been enacted in 16 other states that have significantly reduced their prison populations. He says the provisions in Senate Bill 371 would cut the number of inmates in West Virginia by 18% in the next 5 years.
Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle stood in support of the bill, but they all agreed this is only the first step to fixing the problem.
Senator William Laird of Fayette County is a former sheriff who says he has watched the problem grow.
In approaching this complex problem, I have long recognized that there is no single silver bullet of a caliber high enough to solve this problem. For those who would maintain the costly alternative of a bricks and mortar solution to this problem, I would suggest that we would be back here in a few years still searching for other alternatives.
I don't know that it's necessarily a cure-all for everything, but it's a pretty comprehensive bill that will be a significant step for addressing our problem. I urge passage of the bill.
I stand here after looking at our problems with prison overcrowding for a number of years and say, this is a step in the right direction, and I certainly urge my fellow members to join me in a vote yes for this bill.
In the end, members did vote with Barnes and passed the bill 33-0, with one senator absent. Palumbo says he's not sure if the bill will be amended as it makes its way through the House, but he hopes the vote shows strong support from the upper chamber.
Obviously, we passed this out of the Senate 33-0. That sends a strong message that we all believe as a collective group this is good public policy. I mean, I don't have any idea what they're going to do over there, but it's my hope that they won't make significant revisions. I know that I've heard that some members over there have concerns about the early release provision for nonviolent offenders. I mean, that's a pretty significant part of the puzzle here for reducing the population.
Palumbo says in the future he expects the state to also have to take on sentencing laws and compare West Virginia's serving times to other states to prevent future growth to the prison population. For the Legislature Today, I'm Ashton Mara in the Senate.
In a moment, we'll meet the new executive director of the new State Office of Minority Affairs. First, here's a look at some of the bills introduced in the Senate today. Among the bills introduced in the Senate today, Senate Bill 586, transferring the authority to license cosmetology, barber, and massage schools to the Council for Community and Technical College Education. Senate Bill 591, creating the West Virginia Infrastructure Emergency Response Act of 2013. Senate Bill 593 to increase the excise tax on cigarettes and tobacco products, and Senate Bill 594 establishing a court of claims procedure for unjust arrest, conviction, or imprisonment claims. Up for passage in the Senate tomorrow, Senate Bill 201 permitting expedited partner therapy. Expedited partner therapy means providing prescription antibiotic drugs to the sexual partner or partners of a person clinically diagnosed as infected with a sexually transmitted disease without physical examination of the partner or partners. Senate Bill 341 requires livestock be enclosed by a fence. The bill requires adjoining landowners to pay for a just proportion of partitioned fences. The bill requires notice to adjoining landowners before a fence may be constructed or repaired. Senate Bill 404 to clarify that a child who is physically healthy and presumed safe is a neglected child if he or she is habitually absent from school without good cause. This bill provides an exemption for parents whose children are receiving home instruction. And Senate Bill 407 to require telephone companies and cellular telephone companies to provide the names, address, and telephone numbers of its customers to the Bureau for Child Support Enforcement for enforcing support orders or for distributing support. Herbert Henderson was a noted civil rights leader in West Virginia in the 1960s and served as president of the West Virginia chapter of the NAACP for some time. The new Office of Minority Affairs within the Governor's Office bears his name. Joining us tonight is the first executive director. Dr. Carolyn Stuart is a native of Welch in McDowell County. She received a Bachelor of Arts degree in Social Science from Bluefield State College, a Master of Arts degree in Counseling from Marshall University, and a PhD in Counselor Education and an Advanced Graduate Certificate in Race and Social Policy from Virginia Tech. Dr. Stuart, welcome. So glad you're here.
Thank you.
What is the mission of this new minority office? You've only been in the job since August 2012. What do you see as the mission of this office?
One of the things that the Herbert Henderson Office of Minority Affairs mission is to do is to provide a venue for minorities across the state so that they have a place where they can come and feel comfortable in presenting their issues.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Have you been doing that? Are there examples of things that you've been able to take a phone call and fix something for someone?
I have traveled around the state since I came in the last of August, from the northern panhandle to the eastern panhandle, southern West Virginia, and here in Charleston. I have been able to meet with various agencies, to work with various programs. One of the things that has happened is there have been calls regarding how difficult it is to navigate the Division of Personnel's website. And so I was able to hold some meetings with the Division of Personnel, and as a result, that website is being restructured. Mm-hmm. And I think what you will find is that it will be easier to navigate, and it will reach the minority communities where it's very much needed, because a lot of times those are the communities where the terrain is very rugged, the internet is not readily available, but through some other venues, that information will be disseminated to those communities mm-hmm. in the same timely manner as other communities.
How is your office funded?
The legislature put in place funding for 2 staff and to provide programs and services. We also, the legislature put in place a Minority Affairs Fund.
Oh, okay.
And through that fund, we will be seeking grant funding. We can receive donations and appropriations from private and public sectors to help us to enhance the services that we provide to the minority communities.
It took the legislature a couple of years. This was a proposal that went through a couple of years. Why do you think it was necessary?
Well, In the 21st century, it's evident that it's still necessary by things that I just mentioned, such as not being able to easily access a website. Sure. We know that two of the things that I'm working on right now is the overcrowding, looking at the overcrowding.
Prison overcrowding?
The prison overcrowding, which was talked about today. Mm-hmm. And we know that continues to be a problem, even in the 21st century. And then looking at the achievement gap that continues to be there for our minority students versus non-minority students.
In public education.
In public education. So it's things such as that that lets us know that this office is very much needed.
We have been looking all week at children in poverty. Of course, the Senate Select Committee on Child and Poverty is headed by Senator John Unger. In the African community, we know that poverty is high, particularly among single mothers. What would your office be working on in terms of alleviating poverty or working with families in poverty?
One of the things that we do, I don't really set an agenda. The majority of my agenda is set by the people that I'm put in office to serve. Mm-hmm. So I rely on the phone calls coming in, I rely on meetings, I go to various advocacy groups, various minority groups to hear what the conversation is and to be a part of that dialogue mm-hmm. In an effort to be able to offer some kind of effective strategies to deal with those issues.
Do you have any idea what those effective strategies might be?
Some of the things that we'll need to look at is workforce development. Mm-hmm. You know, in an effort to do anything regarding poverty, you've got to look at some kind of income for mm-hmm. those, and particularly you mentioned single parent mm-hmm. households. Mm-hmm. You've got to look at a way to bring some income into those households. Mm-hmm. And so workforce development would certainly be one of the first things to be looked at mm-hmm. and areas so that we can try to provide some kind of...
And making sure our minorities are aware of it and participate in it.
Absolutely.
I think that's very, very
Absolutely.
Important. All right, so as you look at, you've been into it just less than a year. As you look at this office and your work for the next 2, 3, maybe up to 5 years, what do you see down the road? What do you see this office really achieving?
Down the road, I see this office becoming more and more involved, being one of the front runners in setting some of the agendas. You know, and that's after I've had opportunity to hear from the community and what they have to say, mm-hmm. and then see how we can get marry those two topics and be able to for the Office of Minority Affairs to develop a stronger agenda, mm-hmm. To look down the road 4 or 5 years at maybe some policies. Mm-hmm. And being able to present those. And then I must say, just to continue to work with Governor Tomlin, mm-hmm. Who has been very, very supportive.
Have we made progress since Herbert Henderson led the NAACP in the 1960s in West Virginia?
We have indeed made progress, as evidenced by the Herbert Henderson Office of Minority Affairs. Mm-hmm. I think that speaks volumes mm-hmm. about the progress that's being made. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing progress in other areas, such as the first that African Americans are making here, such as Senator Marie Redd, being yes. the first African American senator.
I remember
so we're seeing things such as that. And to see that, not only it has an impact, a positive impact that is going to carry across the state. So,
Dr. Carolyn Stuart of the Herbert Henderson Minority Affairs Office within the Governor's Office. Pleasure to meet you, and thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
And here's a look at some of the bills introduced in the House today. Among the bills introduced in the House today, House Bill 3016 to allow individuals with eligible medical conditions access to non-public employee restrooms in retail establishments. House Bill 3020 to improve boat dock and marina safety and prevent electrocution injury. Marinas would be required to post signage that states electric shock hazard risk, no swimming within 100 yards of the boat dock. And House Bill 3022 to remove Prohibition-era liquor laws addressing the sale of alcohol on Sundays and permit private clubs to sell alcoholic liquors during brunch hours on Sundays starting at 9 a.m. Up for passage in the House tomorrow, Senate Bill 359, the governor's bill to reform public education. House Bill 2360, the bill requires county assessors to assess property taxes as required by law, and that it's the duty of the tax commissioner to oversee them to ensure that the obligations for providing a thorough and efficient education for the children of the county are not diminished by the underassessment of property taxes. House Bill 2508, the governor's bill to increase the minimum capital investment threshold from more than $25 million to more than $75 million for sales tax increment financing in county and municipal economic opportunity development districts. House Bill 2514, the governor's bill to lower the total amount of tax credits available to the film industry. And House Bill 2814, to provide assistance to victims of human trafficking. This has been the Legislature Today. Tomorrow, we'll close out the week with another visit by our legislative expert, Tom Stevens, with more about how a bill becomes law. As the session nears its final weeks, there are important deadlines lawmakers face next week. We'll explain what they are. I'm Beth Voorhees. Thank you for joining us. Good night.
Support for the Legislature Today has been provided by the following. The High Technology Foundation, headquartered at the I-79 Technology Park in Fairmont. Online at wvhtf.org. Connecting West Virginia families and businesses through high-speed internet services. Learn more about connecting at frontier.com.